As you all know, I'm not endorsing in the GOP primary. I want to hear from all of the GOP candidates on how they plan to defend this nation and our people from the Marxist policies that are currently laying waste to the United States. I think the top-tier candidates are doing just that. Now, some of who the great one, Mark Levin, would call the backbenchers. They have trained their fire on the man who isn't doing any damage to the United States. In fact, our lives are markedly better when he was in office, President Trump. And a corrupt and biased corporate media structure is committed to helping the backbenchers denigrate Trump and elevate themselves so that the very same press can turn on those backbenchers in the general election the way they always do. Hoping for a two-party system in 2024. That's our focus in today's preamble. It has been my custom as a constitutional conservative and your liberty-loving Latino to decry the uniparty. I reject the Bill Kristol, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and John Cornyn's style of republicanism, a style that sees these men and those who follow them waking up every day searching earnestly for a Democrat butt cheek to firmly place their lips. When I pleaded with President Trump at the height of his popularity to give America a second political party, he declined. But hope springs eternal. President Trump, who is not a doctrinaire conservative, has been responsible, ironically enough, for the implementation of more conservative, protective, security, and prosperity policies than any Republican since Ronald Reagan. And the thoroughly upstaged GOP luminaries and leadership hate him for it. They prefer to dupe their readers and voters with historic rhetoric and promises of constitutional conservatism, but never delivering once they are given power. The people's president, President Trump, became synonymous with promises made, promises kept. And again, they hate him for it because his priority was you and not the elites in Washington. Now, I mentioned Paul Ryan earlier. Here he is on CBS News giving his evaluation of the political landscape.
I think Fox News is a very important part of the conservative movement. And if you want the conservative movement to be going in the right direction, then Fox News can have a big hand in that. So I don't want to comment on what is a legal issue, frankly, because I'm a board member.
All right. Folks, Fox, the folks who just fired Tucker Carlson and are actively trying to suppress his First Amendment rights on free speech on Twitter, they're important to the conservative movement? Look, I don't think conservative means what Paul Ryan thinks it means. There's a movement over there, all right, a movement to flush conservatism in the toilet. Sorry, back to Surrender Caucus Paul.
The conservative movement right now is going through lots of turmoil and churn and change. And I think Donald Trump is the middle of that tempest. I think if we get past Donald Trump, I think the conservative movement will be viable and majoritarian. We should get the majority in this next election. But if we nominate Trump, we're going to leave seats on the table. We may not get the Senate majority if we nominate Trump again. So my point is, as a guy who's a fan of Fox News is a big part of this. Fox News and the whole constellation of the conservative movement, the Republican movement, if we can get ourselves as a party and a movement past Trump, we're going to start winning majorities again, I think.
Whoa. Okay, two things here. First, Paul Ryan just committed Fox News to defeating the leading GOP candidate in the race for president. Kind of an odd play for a news channel. Secondly, Mr. Ryan says having Team Republican win is what's most important. Really? Remember the last time Team GOP won? President Trump dragging the establishment GOP over the finish line in 2016? Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the White House. Now, did the Republican establishment get busy on reversing the damage done to this country by Barack Obama? Did the GOP renew a commitment of accountability for Obama's disastrous pro-China foreign policy, for his weaponizing the IRS against conservatives, for his election interference along with Hillary and the other architects of Crossfire Hurricane? No. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell began a systemic campaign of moving on, holding no Democrat accountable, and then turning around and undermining their own president. Ryan wants to blame President Trump for GOP losses, but isn't it true that it was moderate GOP folks, those who caved to Democrats? Isn't that the real reason why conservatives like me are abandoning the GOP? Paul Ryan refuses to acknowledge that the moderate GOP was the main instrument of the red fizzle in 2022's midterm elections. When conservatives censured pro-Democrat Republicans like Liz Cheney and Adam Crying Kinzinger, McConnell, a so-called leader in the Republican Party, condemned those who contended that the GOP platform should be lived up to by those calling themselves Republicans. They aren't just words on a piece of paper. They are why voters vote for Republicans. GOP members like Liz Cheney actually campaigned for Democrats. But Paul Ryan blames Trump, not Cheney. In fact, Mitch McConnell was a vocal supporter of Liz Cheney's pro-Democrat efforts. McConnell diverted precious money from conservative candidates for Senate to support a Surrender Caucus candidate in Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, a woman who was elected after Alaska party bosses went to a corrupt and complicated ranked voting system to ensure Murkowski got in defiance of the voters. Conservatives in Alaska actually censured Mitch McConnell for his election interference in their state. The majority in Alaska didn't want Murkowski, but Democrats and squishy Republicans did. Why? Because this so-called Republican pledged she was going to vote for Democrats in the 2022 midterm election. Yet Paul Ryan, and by extension Fox News, blames Trump for GOP losses. In truth, the GOP loses because those in charge stand for nothing, or worse, they stand for Democrat values. Case in point, 20 Republicans voted to protect one of the most vile, contemptible liars in the U.S. House of Representatives, Adam Schiff. Schiff would have had to pay $16 million in fines after Schiff used his position as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, weaponizing it to attack Republicans and President Trump. Schiff claimed he had, quote, plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy, end quote, regarding collusion between President Trump and Mother Russia, a destructive lie that was confirmed to be a lie by the Durham report. 2 Republicans voted present, and 3 didn't even bother to show up and vote. And with the actions of these 25 Republicans, all Americans can be assured that Schiff and other lying Democrats will lie and abuse power and attack the GOP in the future, knowing the GOP is so weak that they'll never stand up for themselves. In essence, these 25 Republicans greenlit Democrats using the nation's intelligence apparatus as a political weapon from now in perpetuity. Question: if these so-called Republicans won't defend themselves from socialist Democrat abuse, what makes anybody think they'll protect their voters from Democrats' abuse and weaponizing of government? Initial reports yesterday suggested House members Joyce, Fishbach, and Garabino were preparing to vote for protecting Adam Schiff's lies. As the information was coming in, we reported that. I'm delighted to correct the record and tell you these Republicans voted to hold Schiff accountable for weaponizing the Intelligence Committee against the Republican Party. These lawmakers and a majority of the GOP thought Schiff should be held accountable for his abuse of government power. But thanks to Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn-style Republicans, the Democrats now know the GOP is a doormat that Democrats can step on and abuse at will. That means America's decline is all but assured because we lack a real two-party system. Conservatives have nowhere to turn. You know the old saying, God helps those who help themselves? Well, the GOP refuses to help itself. As well, that's all well and good if their weakness didn't harm we the people. It would appear the GOP is inclined to allow illegality, like, for example, Karine Jean-Pierre breaking the Hatch Act law, no consequences. The GOP will allow the abuse, a two-tier justice system, a massive unaccountable government that targets them at every turn. And when the American people elect them into a majority to stop all the abuse, the betrayal, the totalitarianism, the GOP abandons governing, abandons accountability, and abandons the people who put them there in the first place, all in an effort to show their good friends, the Socialist Democrats, that they love them. It seems that either way, Americans get screwed. What's the difference If the GOP starts winning elections, as Paul Ryan said, if all that winning leads to losses for the American people, losses of freedom, losses of security, loss of prosperity, because the Republican Party under Fox News' Paul Ryan and the likes of Mitch McConnell campaign as conservatives but govern as Democrat socialists. Now, unlike the Democrats, the GOP has no unifying principle. There isn't one thing that unites the Republican Party. They can't even unite to say they will punish those who weaponize government against them and our people. They can't even unite in opposition to lawlessness. They can't come together and oppose the collectivist policies of Democrats. So I'd very much like a second political party in the United States, please. I like a party that opposes radical Democrats and doesn't enable them. I'd like a party that stands for and implements constitutional conservatism, not one that undermines it. I'd like a second party that will defend itself and defend you and me.